Hi, my name is Jasmine Smith, and today I will be doing a film analysis on the movie Hotel Rwanda. The main two characters of Hotel Rwanda are Paul, who is the hotel manager and protector of civilians. He's also a Hutu, and he's the husband of Tatiana, who is a Tutsi, and she's Paul's wife. And they have three kids together. The supporting characters within the film Hotel Rwanda begin with George. He's a supplier and also a Hutu who runs a warehouse, and he wants Paul to come to the rally to show support for Hutu power. There's also the general, who is also Hutu, and he is involved with the capitalist parts of the film, in which he has Paul bribe him with liquor in order for him to help all of the civilians who are suffering. And then there's the Colonel Oliver, who is the Canadian, basically leader of the soldiers that are protecting them, and he's from the United States. And then there's Pat Archer, who is the madam who runs the orphanage for all the Tutsi children who have lost their parents during the war. So here's the trailer for Hotel Rwanda. I'm not going to show it just for time purposes, but it's definitely embedded. Want to look at it later. As for the plot summary, in the feature film entitled Hotel Rwanda, intercultural communication factors are addressed when crossing over into foreign affairs. The main character in this film is Paul, who is a Hutu who manages the Hotel des Mille Collines, I believe is how you pronounce it, and takes care of his Tutsi wife, which is Tatiana. Together, the parents struggle to shield their three children from the arising trauma inflicted upon them by the Hutu and Ugandan soldiers. The Hutu and the Tutsi tribes are at war due to the lasting effects of colonialization. The Belgian colonizers once favored the Tutsi as leaders due to their lighter skin, slim noses, and tall physical characteristics. The Tutsi ran the country, but when the Belgians left, the Hutu regained control of the territory with everlasting resentment from the neglect they faced. The Tutsi people are the enemies in this film, and the threats from the Hutu, are actually communicated through radio, which complicate their escape routes as Ugandan soldiers follow them. As Ugandan soldiers follow the Hutus' order to make sure that they can't leave from Africa. And most of them are trying to migrate into Tanzania, where it's a lot safer and the conditions are better, as the war isn't really going on there between the Tutsi and the Hutu. So Paul is forced to flee his neighborhood when his neighbors are slaughtered by the militants, and Paul provides shelter for his family and also about 1,800 Tutsi friends within the hotel headquarters. So I think they house close to 2,000 Tutsi civilians, and basically he was responsible for them being rescued by the United Nations, and for the communication between the French headquarters, the Belgian generals, and the Tutsi and Hutu people. So, as far as intercultural communication topics, I felt that the chapter concerning the social construction of race from colonialization to globalization definitely applied to this film, specifically concerning the evacuation of U.S. citizens. I support this argument because, due to the previous limitations of colonialization, the businessmen who fled without much remorse also utilized got tongue tied, globalization for professional profits. The hotel CEO, for example, ran the hotel based off of his stereotypes of exotic African culture and hired cheap labor at his disposal. This war was caused by previous Belgian colonization principles. The Tutsi were the ones who were in charge of the Hutu, as I described earlier, because their physical characteristics were favored by the Belgians, and Ugandan soldiers were being given orders to kill civilians by the French headquarters. So there's kind of this parallel going on where the Belgians and the French are kind of responsible for the troops within this film. I feel like the Belgians kind of were responsible for the cause of this war because some of their lasting principles are what has affected these stereotypes between the people. Um, and also, similar to that, the French are in charge of the Ugandan soldiers, which are terrorizing all of the people who Paul is trying to shield from violence. So it's kind of like Paul still is like a small piece of the puzzle, but overhead, this is being controlled by the Belgians and the French. Another topic of intercultural communication lies in the culture of capitalism and the business of intercultural communication. The general who Paul had to bribe basically wouldn't allow his soldiers to help any of the civilians without the trade of Cuban cigars and expensive scotch. Globalization increased the trade within this film, resulting in investments that no longer were concerned with profit, but of cultural status in exchange for human life. Um, and in Hotel Rwanda, Paul challenges the value of money within a capitalist society. So there were a few scenes within this film to where Paul challenged the value of money. Kind of towards of the begin, kind of towards the beginning of the film, he was able to pay off the Ugandan soldiers with all of his money that he had in his safe and like valuable goods such as his jewelry and just different little things to hold them off. But towards the end, money had no real value to them because they couldn't spend it at the moment. And like the revolution was bigger than them making a profit or the material things that they wanted to possess. So it's almost like the idea of materialism in which that was kind of the only lasting impact that they had on them, feeling like they were being exposed to luxury goods such as Cuban cigars and expensive scotch versus actual money. So I felt like that was definitely a good point to bring up within the movie because it was just interesting looking at the parallels between a capitalist society and like human livelihood and being able to save people. Like I feel like that's an interesting parallel between what's more important. Is it human life or is it making a profit? And at a point in this movie, making a profit was of no use. So that was definitely interesting to me. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I definitely felt that uh, different topics and different layers of intercultural communication were discussed in this film. And I definitely had a great time researching this. Thank you.